Hey, welcome back. First video after 1,000 subs. First off, thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate that. Secondly, we're at the local pull your own parts junkyard here. And my hat's crooked. Look at that. And yeah, I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt because I don't want to get sunburned. But we are looking for our donor car for our front suspension. Been busy the last few days. We had a busy weekend with some family stuff and whatnot. So I apologize for not getting the video out a little sooner. But today should be a good one because we should be able to get what we need to start mocking up the front end of our pickup. So I'm going to put the phone down and keep looking around. And when I find it, I'll let you know. Here's our little wagon. There's our donor vehicle. 03 Mustang. What we need is just those spindles right there. This part right here. And I chose this car because it's already halfway off. But today we're just after this guy and the one on the other side. So I'm going to get to taking these off. And I'll probably go ahead and grab these strut tops too, just so I can use them for reference. Alright, so what did we get at the junkyard? Well, this is what we got at the wrecking yard. This is, now I didn't need the strut, but I didn't have the right tools with me to get it off of there. So we ended up having to pay for the stupid strut. But this shows you guys what I'm going to be putting in the car and why. If you recall, I said we needed to get into a lighter type of suspension. And I wanted to also keep it very simple. And I wanted something that would be easy to upgrade. Since this is out of an 03 Mustang, they make a zillion parts for it. I can get brake kits for it. I can get performance struts. I can get camber caster plates. I can get any upgrade I want for this suspension. Don't worry about the backing plate being bent to crap. I'm not going to be using them anyway. Really all I need is this spindle. But since it is in one piece still, I'm going to show you how this works and why I want to use it. The way it works is this sits in your car. It allows you to match your wheels here, and all you have is one control arm down at the bottom coming off the lower ball joint here. What you'll notice up at the top is it's got this strut bolted to it. So the way that works, frame, this bolts up to the top of the fender, up, you know, to the strut tower it's called, which is the same style drag race cars use, which is another advantage to this, is just the looks. It's going to look like a drag race suspension. But more importantly, this allows me to only worry about locating this top of the strut, and then I don't have to worry about all the suspension geometry that goes along with an upper control arm. So all I have to do is make a lower control arm that bolts this thing to my frame, and then locate this correctly up at the top, and these two bolts can be loosened and twisted this way to adjust your camber, which is the top of the tire leaning in or out. It is a, this is the, which side is this? This is driver's side. Yeah, driver's side. So it's front steer, which means front steer means the steering is in front of the wheel instead of behind it. The front of the car would be here, the back would be here. So this is front steer, which means I don't have to try and run my rack under the engine. I can run it out in front of the engine. So this is going to work out a lot better for that. And because of, you can see there's already angles built in here. There's an angle built in here. This is a very simple deal. All I have to do is make sure that I'm somewhere where I need to be in this adjustment, probably in the center of my adjustment. Make sure this is straight up and down or cambered in a degree or whatever I decide. And then that's going to tell me where this top needs to be mounted this way. And then to mount it this way, I just dial in the amount of caster I want. Yeah, dial in the amount of caster I want. And once this top is affixed and mounted in place, then as that upper control arm comes up and down, it moves along this line. So my caster doesn't change as the suspension moves up and down. It's really cool. And of course that depends on how my lower control arm is set up. If I have my control arm set up level to the ground, let's say, and this is on, my caster is set like that, as that control arm comes up and down with suspension movement, it's going to actually increase my caster. So caster will change depending on how I mount my lower control arm, but we're going to get all that geometry when I'm actually designing it in the truck and installing it. But this is going to make life really easy compared to 2 control arms and everything that goes with them, it's really light. I've only got 1 ball joint to worry about. And like I said, I can get performance struts. I can get a coilover setup, which is what we're going to run. The factory used a coil spring on the lower control arm, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to use a coilover setup. So my control arm I can just make a quick tubular control arm that doesn't weigh anything. It's going to weigh a lot less than the stuff that was in the S10 or in the Mustang. And then, like I said, we can get a coilover suspension in here. Gives us adjustability for ride height, and a camber caster plate up here on the top allows you to move the top of this strut around to adjust, again, your caster or your camber. So this is what we're going to do on the front of the truck. But I wish I'd have just ordered these things off eBay. Here's the deal. So the local junkyard where you go pick your own stuff, I think it's called Pick and Pull. Pull Apart? Pull Apart. I think it's called Pull Apart. It's over in Knoxville on Rutledge Highway. The problem is it's about a 40-minute drive for me to get there, and I almost always don't have the right tools. Since I never worked on a Mustang, I didn't know what size any of this stuff was. I showed up without the right tools. I took my universal tool kit, didn't have sockets or wrenches big enough for these fittings. So I found a Mustang, luckily, where the one side they had basically taken all that off. So all I had to do was get rid of the lower ball joint. All I had to do was take off the lower ball joint. Luckily there was a guy there who had a wrench I could borrow that was big enough to get the ball joints loose, and then I was able to get these off at the lower ball joint. This one, like I said, I didn't have tools big enough to take these 2 bolts out, so I had to buy the stupid strut. But that's alright. It allowed me to demonstrate how this works anyway. This is a replaceable cartridge. It is 4.5-inch bolt pattern, so we're going to have to run the Ford and Mopar bolt pattern, but that's fine because I make 1,000,000 wheels for it, and it doesn't really matter. It's a custom truck. So where am I at now? And so I go to the junkyard. It's like 95 degrees out. I'm dying out there. I have to borrow a wrench from a guy. He's nice enough to loan it to me. I get this apart, and then he asked me for help because he had borrowed a gantry crane and he was trying to lift a motor. What turns out he was doing was trying to get the transmission out of this minivan, the Chrysler Pacifica or something. Not really a minivan, kind of a bigger minivan. But it's a front wheel drive, transverse setup. Sucks. Like one of the worst things you can try to do on gravel in the middle of a 95-degree day is take out a transmission on one of those things. But no good deed goes unpunished, as they say. So instead of this being a 20-hour trip with me out there dying in the heat for about 20-30 minutes, which I had hydrated for and planned for, I ended up being out there 2.5 hours and thinking I was going to die several times. So that sucks. I always end up, every time I go out there to those self-pick yards, I end up having to help somebody. And I know I could say no, I could claim I don't know what I'm doing, I could play stupid and just walk away, but I can't do that. I just, when someone needs help, I help them. What else we got going on? Oh, and sorry there wasn't a video for a little while here. I've been helping a lot of people do other things. Wasted the whole day going to the junkyard yesterday. I could have bought this stuff for the same price I ended up paying if I'd have just got it on eBay, and I wouldn't have had to been out there dying of sweat for 2.5 hours and driving, what is 40 minutes twice, 80 minutes on a round trip. So with gas being what it is and us only having the big old Dodge Ram, these things were pretty expensive. I wish I'd just ordered them online. So there you go. Not always cheaper to go to the self-wrecking yard. Alright, so there we are. What do we got going on? Well, we're still waiting for the adapter to bolt the engine to the transmission, which is okay because I need to go over to the engine shop and see how that's going. See what kind of ETA I'm looking at on getting the engine back. I'm still waiting for the rods. We ordered new rods. The big ends on our stock rods were starting to get oval shaped and they were going to have to be resized, and when I looked at the cost of resizing the rods and all the work put into balancing and resizing those, it wasn't a huge upgrade to buy some better rods. So I'm okay with the fact that now we're going to be running a steel crank, we're going to have H-beam rods, and we're going to have some decent pistons in it. Because then I can focus more on heads and cams and stuff like that without having to rebuild the bottom of the engine. So I think we're building the engine to where the bottom end could probably handle somewhere in the 400 to 500 range, and I'm expecting to probably making somewhere in the 300 to 350 range, somewhere in between those two numbers. The factory engine only made 230 horsepower, like in its best configuration, so as little as 195 depending on which version of it that it was. So it's still a substantial upgrade, and it's still going to be probably about 100 horses more than the factory V6 had in this truck, because the V6 actually made decent power. But it's going to have a lot more torque. It should be a pretty torquey thing, and between the torque converter, the overdrive transmission, and the rear gearing, this thing should still haul buns. So that's the goal. So we're still waiting on those parts. What else? We've got a few, we got the tool I ordered to be able to start working on that rear diff. It never ends. Every time I go to start working on the rear diff, I realize I need to order something else. We're going to have to get all our suspension design figured out for that so that I can get that installed on the rear diff. We have to do all our welding on that rear differential housing before I install the ends for the axles. And the reason is that housing can move around when you're welding on it. I'll show you that when we're doing it. But basically it means I can't final assemble that axle until I have all the suspension brackets and shock mounts and things like that already welded onto it. So we'll probably be doing that first. We'll get the frame designed in the back first, start making those rails, and then I will get the suspension installed onto the rails and the rear housing installed. And then once the housing's all installed and the shock mounts are in it and everything's ready and it's hung inside the frame, then I can take it back out, install its center section, weld the housing ends on, cut it to the right width, and do all that. So the project marches on. We're running out of time to get it to No Name Nationals, and I at least need to get this thing rolling by then. It's not going to be much to look at the No Name Nationals, but I guess it's more about networking and getting to meet all our favorite YouTubers. So we'll drag something out there one way or another, even if this thing has to stay on the trailer the whole time it's there. We'll get it on there. Alright, I guess that's it. So thanks for watching. Thanks again for helping the channel get to 1,000 subs. It was a 2.5-year journey getting to 1,000 subs. Which isn't too crazy. It seems to be about what most channels do, unless they get lucky and have a viral video or something like that. Get them a little more exposure early on. So thanks to all the channels that helped us with that. I did not do this by myself. Obviously, you guys are the most important part because you're the ones that do the subscribing. And also the other channels that introduced us to their subscribers. Thank you guys. You know who you are. Anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. And I guess we'll see you guys in the next one. So until then, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And thanks a bunch. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves.